Hello, guys. My name is Vipers, or Vipers XP on YouTube, and welcome to the Game Takes podcast, episode 52. We're going to do another open talk podcast. This is going to be number 3 of the kind of the series. We did one back in February. We did one last month. February, if give you guys a recap, February was all about musicians. May was about people who game and have a job. So this month's edition will kind of be focusing on LGBTQ, IA plus, but we're just going to kind of focus on the first 5. We can, if you guys want to add the IA plus on there, that's fine, but it's not kind of going to be mentioned. So since it's Pride Month, we might as well get someone who represents the community and just kind of talk about their experiences of being LGBTQ members. So we're going to let our guest introduce himself, and we'll get going here.
Hi there, everyone. My name is Chill Nalga, and I am a professional loudmouth streamer, and I do video games. And that's it.
That's perfect. So we're going to kind of get further into it. So so kind of first type of question I got is kind of, what is LGBTQ? And so kind of just explain like kind of the letterings and also the specific the specific stance you represent in the community. So when we have specific stances, I don't know, it's kind of, you kind of understand what I'm saying. It might be a little bit confusing for most people, but what do you represent in that community? Or what? Okay, yeah, continue, sorry.
Well, let's start with LGBTQ, stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer community. And it is just those of us with off base, different than normal, straight, whatever orientation. Although it's expanding to add non-sexual people, aces, and other groups like that. And when you had that other question with my view of it, what sort of thing were you?
I'm looking like what. Like, are you a lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or queer? That's what I was asking. It was a little confusing.
I used to think I'm bisexual and probably still am, but I'm probably more pan than like anything right now. So
actually, before kind of getting further this, kind of before you kind of identify what you are in regards to community, can you kind of explain like each of the letters, kind of like what it is, like what does it mean by being a lesbian? What does it mean by being, gay, transgender, bisexual, queer? And
yeah, for lesbianism, it's I don't know what terms to use here. Lady love lady, and then we have guy love guy. Bisexuals just shoot for whichever goal is open. Trans people are, I'm cis. Like, I wouldn't sort of assume that I knew what trans people were in regards to sexuality. There's a confusing web of possibilities for trans people. I certainly haven't wrapped my head around it. Generally speaking, trans is more about a state of being and a community, at least in my mind, than just the sexuality or the attractions present. So I would suggest talking to trans people and getting their viewpoint based on their experiences, which, the way the world is right now, isn't fantastic. I'm not sure what I know what queer means in a non-derogatory fashion, but we've covered a fair bit of it before and after the Q, so I'm not quite sure what's in there as well. So what sort of non-normative flag?
Okay, just curious, because I'm kind of so what I got for you is, you notice, as I tried to find people who are part of the LGBT community, and I was curious, how did you what you said you're queer, right? Okay, that's correct. I'll make sure.
Well, bisexual, pansexual, but yeah.
Okay, I'm just curious, how did you first realize that you were a queer, or what else? Yeah, kind of makes sense.
Well, to start with, I was very young. And it might have actually been led into by another event.
Might as well explain the event in more detail.
Okay, very briefly. I was born in Hungary, and right around when I was born, the Russian occupation was just packed up and left. So new goods started to make their way in. My father was really happy to import a VCR and contraband porn. He showed his friend, he left it playing, and that all seemed fine. At the time, I was tremendously young. I don't want to say how young, but not great. Not great parenting, guys. The actual catalyst for realizing I have omnidirectional feelings towards bits was probably around 13. A certain show made its way to Hungary that then led the way into me becoming a fan and talking to someone, which led me to finding explicit material and just careened down from there. That was the absolute sort of apex of that at 13 or so.
So, how that was a TV show. How did, like, talking to other people who were part of the queer community, kind of that, how do, like, I don't know if you asked them or not, but how, you got for your TV show, how do other people kind of identify, first realize that? Because yours is kind of interesting. I thought people through a TV show, how to, if you can understand what I'm saying.
You're saying how do other people say that they've awakened to their sexuality?
Or like, so sorry, I'm trying to explain that, but it's kind of hard to do. So you found that you're kind of getting into that queer sense when through a TV show that you were 13. How do other people in the queer community get into, like, realize that, get into it? I don't know what I'm saying, but like other experiences, if it makes sense.
It's been very varied. There have been. I've spoken to a friend very recently who I've known for 20 years, and he just like telling me he's going to the park. He told me that he had a forced encounter when he was very young as well, and that's what made him realize that he was gay. But then it ranges from like just. I've had a friend from Ukraine who has said that they were trying on their mother's things, so jewelry, makeup, the stockings, and etc. And they were never caught, but over time they sort of just like got a little collection for themselves, and they thought, this feels normal. It took a while. It took many years. I can't tell you how much he said it took at the time, but it's like the rainbow that the flag represents for LGBTQ. It is all sorts of circumstances and walks of life, and it's usually, I think the widest one would be exposure to media. So ideas present in television shows or certain characters, or the few that are lucky would find it through exploring it either live or in their thoughts. But I myself haven't started to question it until I've seen something that made me question it. So certain amounts of exposure might be needed.
So media is kind of mostly the popular form of kind of just getting the exposure out there. Actually, I might not. I thought personal experiences would kind of be that, because again, something that you would have to do physically. It's something more mental, but it is. I'm kind of shocked that a lot of the influence kind of comes from just whatever's shown on the media, and yeah.
Well, I'm not like the leader of LGBTQ people.
Yeah,
but
I know.
When I talk to them, they do sort of say that they had some sort of influence from somewhere. It can be as simple as just hearing a character voiced in a video game and thinking that's a sexy voice. Why do I think that way, etc. If it's real, if it's more real, then that's fine. But because of the realization, it tends to be big, it tends to be scary, and especially if you're young and rely on your parents, who may or may not be well adjusted in this regard, you'll want to be careful with what you tell them, you want to show them, and not risk not having anywhere to live, essentially. So for this escapism angle, the media, the games, the shows, it's a bit safer than like going into a club and saying, well, I'm going to ogle those bits now, and what's that going to be like? There's not an immediate sort of repercussion scenario unless you do something very dumb, and that safety is probably required for some people. Like, imagine your first time before having sex. You were very nervous though, weren't you? Assuming you're not ace, in which case, sorry,
I'm gonna go in. I've never had sex, so I'm a
That's
virgin.
fine.
Yeah, so yeah,
Perfectly
that's
fine.
fine.
So the prism of worries you would have at that moment is at least partially similar to questioning the very thing that might lead to that prism appearing in the first place. So performance anxiety, am I good enough? Is the entire thing good enough? Is something weird going to happen? Those factors are lessened if you're allowed to just think about it in your own time, in peace and privacy, and you don't have to. If it's tied to a person, there will be other complications. If it's a friendship, am I endangering that friendship? Am I making them feel weird with my explorations? Many considerations like that.
Yeah, a lot of times just kind of getting it out there might actually hurt. It might cause some problems. That kind of makes sense because it's something that isn't, people have different viewpoints on it, and people have different opinions that you might not realize. They might say it, they might say it quietly. You might think, okay, I might not be you look at, just say you're bisexual or gay. Just go for example here. And, your friend isn't, you don't know how your friend's going to react to it because, again, he could had some previous, he could have, you don't know what's going to happen because, they trust you as a friend and all of that. They don't have, they might not be interested in whatever weird stuff, but, something like being gay or transgender or bisexual might ruin that in a blink because it's something that doesn't fit their circumstances, their viewpoint.
Yeah.
And especially when most of the world is not really a big fan of, just not a big fan of being a part of the community. Some people really kind of hate it, if it kind of makes sense. So it's hard to kind of approach it out there. You got to be safe with it. You got to make sure that it won't cause problems. You don't know what's going to happen with the consequences of just basically just saying to the public that you're gay or you're bisexual. This is a big case. Interesting story. This happened a couple of days ago. A football player named Carl Nassib plays for Oakland Raiders. Las Vegas Raiders. Came out as gay, and he received a lot of support back then. And he still has a job. But there was a couple years ago, 7 years ago, when there was a NFL player named Michael Sam. He came out as gay. People avoided him. He was supposed to be a first or second round talent in the draft. He got picked to the 7th round because of that. And you go different years. 2021 to 2014. Now people are going to be more accepting, but you still going to have a few that are going to kind of just not do it. I just kind of avoid them at all. I just hate them. But it's gotten a lot better with kind of people accepting the situation.
It's easier for people who have the spotlight to find acceptance. They'll probably also receive more abuse, but they will have fans who either won't care or will actively support these people. So I used to think it was a strange deal for people to have told that, oh, it was very brave of them with their millions of dollars and millions of fans to come out as whatever. I suppose as trailblazers it might have been a thing, but I just never quite got how that's a thing. For maybe a cynical point of view, but at the point where someone can say that they have over $100 million, I don't think they're risking anything career-wise, where if you're 18, 19, 20 or something, you haven't quite managed to move out or whatever, then if your like religious parents find out, that's more than a 50-50 that they're going to do something about it or try to. And that might just be a lot of yelling, disowning, tossing out of the home. The private person has a lot more to lose by asking people that they know and love to embrace their lifestyle, even if it doesn't hurt anyone. It can get very nasty. I've had experiences of people telling me that their friends have suddenly needed to be evacuated from home because the parents were getting very violent when they found out that their son was gay. So they had to be moved several states to safety that night.
Yeah, there's a lot of abuse with that just because people don't have like that. It's kind of like saying where like political views, there could be arguments behind it. Um, many, sports talk, there could, anything with like arguments, but except on a more, this is like more political level, same thing as, Republicans, Democrats fighting. This is something that is supposed to be supportive, but it turns into argument. And it's kind of just shocking to hear that.
I don't know if it's ever supposed to be an argument. Like if
I
you're a
know it
parent,
shouldn't be argument.
yeah, no, but especially the example, like if you're a parent, then your one job is to love and support your kids. You don't do that, then you're a shit parent. That's what I think is it's shockingly common, but it's not just that. It's like, okay, you tell your parents and they're fine with it. Is it going to get around? Like, are your peers at work, are they going to do anything? Or are you like, if you're in university or college or however that goes, are you going to be made fun of for being gay or for not being such and such? There's a lot going on, and it's not helpful during a time when someone might be coming to a pretty big realization about themselves anyway.
Mm-hmm. So the next thing I got for you is, what was your friends and family reaction when you first said that you were a queer or pansexual, but whatever?
Well, my father wasn't around. My mother, I went up to her, I think at like 14 when I was way more sure. And I said, this is going on. And the exact reaction was she just kind of stops what she's doing. She looks at me for a second and says, bisexual, you don't even know what that means. And just went on her day. Like I never said anything. So that's pretty positive considering she's got issues. My friends cannot remember a single one of the few I had minding in any capacity. They made jokes about it, but it was like, yeah, get used to the situation. It's fine. It wasn't overly hurtful or anything. Just references to my preferences. I think I had a very easy time, honestly.
That's kind of good to hear because sometimes just, again, we've been talking about this for a while, just people, for just kind of with the previous points where, there could be a lot of hatred or disownership if you come out and, you're lucky that mostly it didn't seem positive at first. Like, they didn't really kind of congratulate you, but they kind of just didn't want to. They just maybe not with the friends part, a little bit of hatred, but that kind of just got over real quick. Your mom was just okay, just asked you a simple question. Did
Could have
she?
been worse.
Yeah, like kind of all that, and then just kind of let it go and just let it normal. I'm curious, why did your mom ask that question of you being a bisexual, the bisexual point, although you're not?
Oh, no, she didn't. I just went up to her at 14 at some point. I decided like I'll tell her because she's my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And there wasn't really anything around it before it. It was just I decided and I done it, and then she just stonewalled it. So
Okay, just curious on that one. So next I got is, what daily struggles occur? So what kind of struggles occur when being a queer or for anyone who is a part of LGBTQ community?
well, let's start by saying that depends on where you live. I left Hungary 11 years ago, and currently it is a fascist shithole that is trying to stop trans people existing. So back home it ain't great. If you live in places where homosexuality or depictions or encouragement of homosexuality is more than outlawed, then it's a risk that you're taking with your health and possibly your life. That's sort of one end of the extreme end of the spectrum. There's all the entry level fun stuff we discussed, the peer not the peer pressure, the judgment you receive from people around you, possible loss of home, possible loss of status, career, whatever. I think that there is this weird thinking still prevalent today that it's wrong because it's not what we've been doing forever. We've all heard that argument. It's unnatural, but there's also a not increase, not the right word I want to use, a growing acceptance as we have more and more not horrible media representation, whether or not from actors or characters. The awareness is an important thing. My wife is trans, and I helped her come to that realization a few years ago. But before she started telling me that I might be trans, she might be, I thought, oh, I didn't really understand trans people. I didn't know them as a group, that they had basically that they had existed. Only since my wife has had her awakening that I've sort of entered into that group in a support role, like an ally, instead of, obviously I'm comfortable with my gender, but it's been very eye-opening to see the challenges that trans people face, from the earlier mentioned things to just private personal issues and fears regarding the transition itself. Because of course the initial argument in the media is that, oh no, they will go into the wrong bathroom to perv on children, as if you could just lop off the bits that you don't want in 2 minutes and get that done. No, it is years of hormone therapy. In the UK particularly, you're also required to be judged by a panel of mostly white men to say that you are the gender that you think you are. They have to give the say, like it's their say to give. And there's a psychological assessment to make sure that you are not vulnerable because the hormones that you take are, of course, they will have an effect on you, which that's a multiple year process. And then you might want things like hair removal, so you have a more feminine face. You might want to have extra surgery to give out the curves that the transitioning process doesn't actually give you. You know, if pardon the example, but if you think your boobs end up too small, then you're probably going to turn to plastic surgery, that sort of thing. There's a lot of self-esteem issues that people have to tackle.
Do you kind of have that personally, kind of with you kind of being a part of the community? Kind of what do you think about every day? Like, do you kind of have something in the back of your mind? What happens if something goes wrong? You work, something goes wrong at work, and there's a lot of since you're part. Have you explained to your workers that you were kind of a queer, or you still kept that silent?
I'm sorry, you cut out just then. I didn't hear what you were.
So did you have you explained to your workers? I'm assuming that you do work, that
Yeah.
you did.
I do, sort of. My actual co-workers are people that know and support me, but it's a bit tricky because I'm actually a ghostwriter. So the people that I'm writing for can't know that I exist.
Okay, so you just basically don't want to, just want to keep it as secretive as possible. Makes sense, because
It's not that, it's my existence
Oh,
has to remain a secret, not my
yeah.
sexuality. Because a
Okay.
ghostwriter is I write for someone else, they take the credit, I can eventually put it on my portfolio, and it's all good.
Okay, just curious.
Sure,
What
sure.
other kind of problems, issues, what do you think about consistently, like daily, that might concern you as being a part of the LGBTQ community, kind of like personally, on a personal level, if it makes sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, mostly for my friends, the advancement of accepting LGBTQ people seems to be terribly slow. It is moving forward, and a certain part of me is grateful that that's even happening, but there are still attacks, unprovoked attacks on gay people, gay couples. Um, Trans people have had a few incidents in the past month where they have been on the receiving end of an unwarranted assault. I think one of the concerns now is the trying to cut some politics out of this. There's been an upswing in demonization for trans people. That I mentioned it with the whole wrong bathroom thing. The logic there has gone so far off the rails to justify just resentment and anger and petty thinking against anyone different to the average straight white person, that it is looped back into being harmful. Can I be a bit more specific with this? Or
Yeah, that's fine. As much as you need.
So in my mind, the start of this era was marked by the whole wrong bathroom, they're gonna perv on our kids, trans people are evil thing. And then that spun off from there to the various things in the middle. Like they shouldn't be allowed to, other people say this, obviously, they shouldn't be allowed to compete in the wrong genre sports. Such and such, the integrity of yeah, okay. Then we circled back around to, okay, well, someone in America said, okay, if you think trans people are going to perv on your kids in bathrooms, we will make people check the genders of your kids to verify that they're the gender that they say you are. So we've gone from protecting kids from maybe pedophiles, at best maybe, at worst maybe, like to like actually, why sort of, if you think about it, when you have a goal and you set out to accomplish it, then you're done. But when what you're given is the absolute thing that you were terrified about, you're still in favor of that, then you never had that goal to begin with, and it's all about hatred. Just some sort of fear that like society will crumble. Anything from, oh well, our norms and values, to but we won't reproduce the human race enough, to just whatever.
Okay.
Anything can be used as a justification. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, there's a lot of controversy around that, especially I think a couple years ago where they had to cancel a NBA All-Star game because of the bathroom situation in Charlotte. And it's like, really? You have to cancel something? It's not that controversial. It shouldn't be that controversial. It's something that doesn't really affect the game, but you have to cancel it because people got hatred towards it. And it does happen to a lot of the members of the LGBTQ community because, it's something out of the ordinary for the normal person, or for the very I don't know what politics side it is, but we're just gonna say normal because I'm not really into the politics where I can explain why the side that hates it, LGBTQ people. But it's really odd. I got one question to ask, since you were talking about the bathroom situation a little bit more. Mm-hmm. How should like the since you're you're talking about transgender and what you're testing the genders, how should it be, so for a trans person, usually they switch from a female to a boy, or a female to a male, or male to a female. Mm-hmm. What should be the confirmed gender for that, if for a transgender, either with the ones with genetics or just kind of what you are, like what you switch to and preference?
I have to start this by saying that gender and sex are two different things. Mm-hmm. Haven't sort of internalized the full extent of what that means, but for trans people, they should definitely be treated as their identifying gender. The reason behind this is let's say you have a female friend and they decide, actually, I'd like to have my danglies on the lower end, not the upper end. Okay, so they undergo the hormone treatment, they might even get the surgery, but before they get the surgery, it will be a good couple of years, unless they can shell out tremendous amounts of money just like that, then they are going to be stuck in the wrong body. And a part of the trans experience is discarding your old self, almost if not entirely completely. So you go from being called Carol to Charlie. And when someone still calls you Carol, that's called, dead naming someone if they use your old gender name, and is generally a pretty sort of upsetting things for trans people to deal with. So best to avoid that. In the same vein, being stuck in the wrong body, once some trans people might have emotional responses to this called dysphoria, and gender dysphoria specifically. My wife has had a few reactions and hadn't figured out what they were until it made sense that she feels comfortable as a trans person. That's what she wants to do. So thank you, Telegram. It's definitely what the trans person wants to be identified as. It's not very complicated. It's not very hard. The wishes should be respected, I do believe. There's just no reason to. you know, from an ordinary person's perspective, it might be new, it might be weird, like they might not look quite right, big old air quotes, but that's their like paranoia and discomfort to deal with. This person hasn't done anything to hurt anyone. So there just needs to be a bit more basic level understanding and acceptance from normies, or I don't know what to call them, you know, straight cis white people, straight white people. There are a lot of ways to help trans people that don't require donations or massive efforts, and just not insisting on misgendering someone. And like I've done it to my wife, I've done it to friends. We're human and we fuck up. And what you do is then you sincerely apologize if you really didn't mean to. And then you move on. So it's like most other things in life. Generally, live your life in a way that makes you happy with the minimal damage and impact on other people. So it doesn't cause you harm to correctly gender and name your trans friends. Why not do it? That's a good start. And the rest is, I think, just a lot of general emotional support from all the hatred slung at trans people. They need a friend. They need to talk about things. They might need to explore their thoughts with you, like the Dr. House and the janitor situation is. They might just want to bounce a few ideas off and see what sticks. But there's basically no reason to disrespect trans people.
I got one question for this. I was kind of thinking about it while you were talking about it. You talked about it, kind of the expenses of being a transgender, kind of switching surgery. Kind of from what, you know, you talked to many transgender people who have done the surgery. What kind of health effects does it cause for them? Just kind of curious if you know any of it or not. That's fine.
Okie dokie. Once again, these are the experiences of my friends and my wife as I understand them. I could be a little off base, but when you decide that you're trans, and we're going to skip the exploration to that part, you decide you want to be trans and you want to go to the other gender, you will generally have to report to some sort of medical professional. It might be a doctor, it might be our private service, and say, okay, well, I'd like to be a trans person. At which point they'll come back and say, okay, well, we need to make sure that you're not like suicidal or some other, you know, warning flags, that you're not emotionally or mentally unstable. And this isn't like a choice that's going to result in horrible things, because when you do get hormone treatment, you get a bit funny. So maybe even not universally, it's just, at least for my wife, she got anxious. She got these little anxiety attacks that reduced over time. But yeah, if all goes well, then you're going to start getting hormones. These are generally not free, and they're generally not very cheap either. So I can't tell you what they cost. You know, it's her business what she pays, but I know it's more than, I think, £80 a month, and that's just the UK. Other places with medicinal problems might have it be more. So you take the hormones, then you proceed to auxiliary stuff, like other external factors. Like my wife particularly had to get a voice coach to teach her how to soften her voice. That obviously cost a bit of money. Then you have the renewing of one's wardrobe. If they really immediately desire to embrace their new gender, their correct gender, then they will abandon a healthy amount of their wardrobe, if not all of it, and they have to go new pants, new shirts, new skirts, whatever it may be, to reflect themselves. The biggest issue, unfortunately, that I can think of is the massive waiting time years after hormone therapy starts, when you're ready for surgery, and the surgery costs itself. I've seen wildly varying figures just in the UK when I was investigating for her, so I can't tell you an exact amount. I don't know what it might be. I've seen figures ranging from about £1,200 to £6,000. But in between the surgery and the last thing, you can prepare by having laser hair removal, which is a repeated process. You have to do it over a couple of months and is generally not very cheap either. It's exceptionally expensive in America. I know that. These are just some of the costs. I'm pretty sure I sort of went over a couple. Um, Things like if your landlord finds out that you're trans and he or she is a massive bigot and you get thrown out, then that's going to cause some turmoil, movement, panic hotels, whatever. Just incidentals or unseen costs like that. It's by any definition a very cheap process. It's not a weekend booze fest that you come out of light and fluffy. You are in this for time and money.
Yeah, this is something it's cost a lot of money. You're gonna have a lot of side effects. Maybe hormone therapy doesn't work well. Maybe that laser hair removal, it might be a long-term mistake. Where do a lot of health effects, a lot of stress, a lot of stuff that you have to do. Just curious for all the people who 80 pounds is $112 per month. So if you don't feel like spending that, I don't know how much 6,000 or 6,000, 8,000 pounds are for dollars, but it's somewhere in the 5-digit range. So
about 9.
Yeah, so
and
kind of expensive to get stuff.
That doesn't even cover the American healthcare insurance stuff. So because it's elective, I don't think insurance will cover it. Now, if gender dysphoria was recognized as a very troubling condition, then it might be. It might receive some medical support. Because gender dysphoric people can think of suicide. That for so many years they're trapped in this body that they realize they no longer want or that isn't really them. A very strong disassociation can lead to very horrible thoughts. Almost never behavior, but yeah.
Okay, so the next thing I got for you is, what is it? So you lived in Hungary and UK. We're going to kind of talk about kind of both experiences. You kind of talked about the Hungary situation a little bit. What is being a part of the LGBT community like in Hungary and United Kingdom? We'll go with Hungary first. You said it was kind of fascist, but is there any other, you just want to kill you for it? Any other details that you got? While at it.
I didn't really engage in many of these groups when I was younger. I had reasons to not be around people from personal traumas, but I have engaged online, which I don't know if that counts for much or anything. It was, as a whole, the LGBTQ community in Hungary was peaceful and small and modest in that sort of size-based way. So I know I said small before. It was the small community I did get myself involved in for a few weeks. We just met up in a public spot, chatted a bit, went to a cafe, and then just dispersed after some more chatting. It wasn't anything really. I had left the country in 2011, so I don't know what's happened since, except of course the things I keep hearing about. At the time, I don't think LGBTQ people were doing too badly. I certainly can't remember that being the case, but there's still, and just because I'm focusing on trans issues doesn't mean like gay people don't have their own issues as well. I'm just sort of focusing on a more vulnerable group. But for my own experiences, it wasn't bad at all. I have had someone who encountered some, what I'm trying to say. So I didn't sort of receive much abuse for that at all. I didn't make it immediately obvious. And that's a personal choice. If someone wants to make it obvious that they're gay for their own gender, that is theirs to take. It's not for judgment, but do know that you will be judged. And it's a risk you have to see if you want to take on yourself.
Before we kind of talk about the UK situation with LGBTQ community, I'm just curious: was LGBT community kind of problems in Hungary kind of force you to leave, or was it just kind of work purposes? Just curious.
they've had no input on me deciding to leave Hungary. The primary draw there was financial reasons and to escape a fair bit of abuse.
Okay, just curious on that one. Then kind of talk about the UK situation with LGBTQ, because you kind of had it for 10 years now, lived here for 10 years now, you kind of have a grasp on it.
At least a little bit. I haven't really tuned into trans people as such until the last 2 or 3 years, so I am way more behind than I should be. I'm just going to say that. There's sort of no way to not make this political because it touches upon a bit of politics. I'll try to discreetly skirt around the center of it. There is negative portrayal of trans folks in the UK media. I don't know, and I can't say who's paying for what, if anything, but a lot of the articles, a lot of the pieces tend to slam trans people's roles, trans people, being trans is a fancy. Like I said, like they think that it's like a weekend booze fest that you just like get a bit weird, you know, then you stop and you recover and it's fine, like some sort of blip on the radar, but it's not. For here, there seems to be a concerted effort to minimize trans people and to push them out of existence. I can't tell you why, what flavor of hatred it is, but I have had friends that I've spoken to who have lost jobs for it coming out, not even then telling someone in work, but it just came out that they were thinking of being trans and they've lost a job. I've spoken to friends who have been abused by their doctors who, when they said, oh, I want to be trans, you know, what are we doing? The doctors have asked either just invasive questions regarding their genitalia, which I can't tell you what they asked, but it was not okay to ask those questions, or they have made gross advances because trans people are also unfortunately seen as a fetish thing. It's a mess down here. Generally in the UK, and this might not be specifically aimed at trans people, but it certainly doesn't help. The national health system, the NHS, is ostensibly a free service where you can get life-saving procedures done if you need it, but funding has cut that tremendously. Now, this is important to note because even before COVID, patient numbers were piling up as people were getting underpaid and quit or stressed out of work. Now the situation is worse. Now there's COVID to deal with, along with less space, less money, less everything, but the transitioning support for trans people on the NHS is backlogged to fuck. There is a years-long waiting list to be seen to start hormone therapy. There's even longer for surgeries, but the only benefit being that if you do manage to last that long, if you don't have severe dysphoria, then you can get the procedure done for free. But the waiting is absurd.
I'm kind of question for this. So from your experiences, which is, so you talk, both of them sound kind of horrible. Which situation at the current moment is worse for, I don't know how, again, you don't know much about the Hungary situation, but is it Hungary or UK? Just kind of what you got off in regards to the LGBT community, because it doesn't sound great for kind of those people still.
Did not think about it. It's I feel like the effort in the UK is more overarching and concentrated. In Hungary, it's just a censor. It is an ass bag enacting fascism. It is an appeal to a certain side from where they hope to gain votes and favors and power. However, Hungarian suicide rates are 4 times higher than the American average. This is a figure I had to quote yesterday on my Twitter or the day before because I've certainly thought about it myself, but there are other factors in Hungary that make it catch up to the UK situation a little bit. So the economic factor is tremendous. Everyone at like entry-level jobs, if you think of your clerk or postman or cashier, is paid a almost funny amount of money, tremendously small, like a joke. They're expected to live on that. And that's before you think, I'm going to get these expensive drugs for the hormone replacement. I'm going to get the expensive surgery that I don't even know if our healthcare system covers that, because they might have changed it if it was ever in need of change, but it sounds elective because it hinges on recognizing that trans people are valid and or gender dysphoria is a thing and can affect you severely, suicide, etc. UK, however, I think the UK situation is worse because there have been discovered and proven ties from certain organizations in the US funneling money into the UK to advance the anti-gay, anti-trans agenda here. This mostly I might be wrong, but I've seen little groups set up that pretend to be really LGBTQ friendly, but actually they're doing and saying all these things that are subtly manipulative, and their funding comes from these highly questionable sources. I'm omitting terms and things here to keep it a little bit more neutral, but nothing really to do with LGBTQ at the moment, but I'm also autistic, and I have seen a similar group called Autism Speaks, where they have 0 autistic members and generally don't think highly of autistic people. If you actually go into what they're saying and doing, then it becomes evident. And that's the sort of thing that has maybe not taken roots in the UK, but definitely sort of grown much too much in the last few years.
Okay, just kind of curious about that because it seems, again, both countries, but it seems like the UK situation is worse. So that you kind of lived there for 10 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of actually one more thing before I get to the next, go further into this. What country, I don't know how much you know about the rest of Europe, the rest of your situation with LGBTQ, because you only kind of lived in 2 countries. Which country has like the best situation for the community? I'm just curious on that one, if you know, just from from your experiences, from what you know.
I've actually researched this briefly. The current climate in the UK has made my wife want to move. I agree with her, and Brexit's also a thing. So we want to eventually go somewhere else, and we didn't know where we wanted to go. So I did some research on the most LGBTQ friendly countries, because of course, when I said, let's go home, I was made aware of the Hungary situation, and we can't do that because I had my reasons for suggesting Hungary, but that was not one of them. I wish I could tell you though, because what I researched it was a list based off criteria that actually did look like it was good and accurate, and it relied on metrics that on the paper make sense, but on this, I don't know what to call it, so I'm just going to christen it trans ideality scale of where to live. Like the UK was, I think, number 11 out of 50, and trans people living in the UK can tell you that it is not that good. You might not be openly discriminated against yet, but the point I'm trying to make here is that it might not be the situation that you're told that it is. Even if the numbers make sense, you can't really be sure that that is what you're getting.
Until you experience it.
I'm sorry?
Until you experience living in that country, then the numbers, you can't prove the numbers are 100% true, yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. I haven't really been a sort of popular news kind of person. I don't turn on the television at 5 or whatever. I have had friends who have, especially in the wake of Brexit, received various personal attacks, anything from their skin color to their gender, sexuality. Foreigner go home, or more outwardly gay, queer presenting people were given a bit of a let up, so to speak, for at least a good few months. But beyond that, and I know that incidences occur, I hear about the occasional mugging or beating, and it's never pleasant. I don't know, because I live far away from any like big city myself, if it's enough of if it's if it's around the standard numbers for like a country in the civilized world. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
My experience, that's the difficult part, is I tend to keep to myself and really see the full picture through my friends' testimonies. And, it's not perfect. I can say that it's at least not perfect. I don't know how horrible it is quantifiably for a person that chooses to present queer.
Oh, I was just curious about the numbers, but yeah, I probably if UK is number 11, I gotta be curious about the other 38 countries' situations, because that's you saying that the UK situations were like really horrible. I'm curious like how Europe is as a whole.
That's sort of what I was trying to say. Is on paper the UK is this great trans sort of place, because you have this assurance and that assurance, and yeah, but public opinion is being poisoned against trans people. You must remember like how trendy and hip and fun it was to hate on gay people in the 70s and 80s. Gay people were the acceptable targets. So in much the same way as African Americans were in America and all across the world usually for a while, and I'm not comparing the two directly, let's just make that clear, it was seen as very okay to just lump abuse on this type of person. And there's always been an agenda to go with it. I don't know Black history. I can't speak for that at all. But for gay people, one of the greatest sort of launchers of this wave was, of course, the AIDS panic. That's all gays spreading it, and it's only anal sex, and these horrible gays, watch out, because apparently being responsible for the extinction of humanity wasn't enough. There was always a reason to justify this. The anti-trans movement might not have been sparked by perving on kids in the wrong bathroom, but it certainly didn't help. It got pretty big, and there being a fairly popular, very unfortunately vocal person who has fueled the flames with a certain book author did not help. A lot of people will listen to someone in the spotlight, no matter how horrible or taper thin they are. So these kinds of like intricacies, the listing can't really take into effect. I'm sure whomever made the list, because they were at least trans friendly and probably trans themselves, were thinking, okay, so technically you're not going to be shot for walking down the street wearing a skirt when you're a guy, or just presenting, wrong according to the government or whatever. So yeah, it got up there because you're not likely to be shot in a cage quite yet, although they want to, I'm sure, the government. But when you get down to like the real life situation, the interpersonal, the social, the influence and the influencers, there is very public discourse about the rights of people that are alive, that have done nothing to hurt anyone, as if their very existence is before a hate-filled tribunal and subject to their approval. Brief aside to tie into this, I have looked at moving to Japan as like a possible thing for me and my wife, and she does more of the trans research than I do. She has mentioned that the cultural attitudes in Japan towards trans people are relatively benign. They treat it less as the West does, where it's trans people, and more just, oh, that's weird. So it seems like there's less innate hostility over there about this entire thing. I don't know if that means that it's cultural or whatever at its core, but you will have to come to grips with a world that changes very slowly.
Mm-hmm. I got an idea for this. Since you're kind of trying to find out a country, I don't, again, it's just a suggestion. You don't have to do this. I'm not going to suggest you do this, but try to, like, if you're going to test it out, just so instead of trying to just move there immediately and just try to settle down for like years and years, just maybe for a couple of days, you take like a vacation trip. Just say, I'll
Oh
go
yeah.
for example, you go to Tokyo for just like vacation, explore the city, just
Yeah.
live. Just you're trans, just treat it as you live like your life. Whatever the
Feel
case
the
is.
pulse. Feel the
Yeah,
pulse. Yeah.
yeah. Just 4 days, just do what it is, and do what you gotta do, explore whatever the the food places, the national monuments in Tokyo. Go there for and just see what the reaction is from people. Like, look, just try to while you're enjoying the trip, because I don't want you to I don't want you guys to kind of just think about it constantly. Like, oh, it's like just
I
observe.
get you.
Just kind of if people stare, just walk normally. Maybe observe once in a while just to see if people are really kind of just staring at you, giving a dirty look, taking pictures, or like just focus on the reactions a little bit while trying to just kind of live a normal life. I think it'll probably be a lot easier than just trying to just move immediately to a country and then just have it be horrible and then you can't really go back for a little while.
Well, we're probably going to think about it constantly, because for me, her peace of mind is one of the first things. I want her to
Yep.
think that where she is not dangerous to where she lives. Right now, we're in a wonderful little town where she feels safe, but within the wider UK, if the media push continues, etc., we'll have to go at some point, I think. And I like the idea of sort of getting my finger on the pulse regarding this matter, like during a holiday. I don't sort of know how effective that is. Even if you're not busy with the foods and the other bits of the culture and the Lord knows what, and your limited time, it might not be enough to see the full picture. You might not see any of the picture, really. If you don't go out of your way to ask, then you might even get the wrong idea. On the list, the Netherlands were the third, I think, of that 50. And I have a few friends who have confirmed that the Netherlands in particular is pretty okay about that. It's a pretty good place in regards to not being hostile to trans people. But it's a good advice to try and make sure somehow that where you're moving isn't going to eat you up one way or another. I want to think of just advice to give people that feel or need to move from where they are to have a less, I don't know if ostracized is the wrong word, or judged, or what, a better existence for themselves. You can make some educated guesses. You can look at data like I did and then figure out based on your own metrics what you think is possible. So for me, I ruled out a couple of countries because of things like tremendous police corruption or human rights problems, or I would love to go back home for reasons that make sense to me, but government wise, I don't think the people are anti-trans for the most part in Hungary. I could be wrong, but it's definitely not a good place to be right now. And I can't take the risk that she is going to be in a state of anxiety, that she isn't going to feel comfortable being herself just because of other people being that way, or she wants to go for a walk in the park that she might be assaulted or accosted or assaulted. That's not on the cards as a possibility. You'd sort of have to look culturally at a country in greater detail to see how recent examples have panned out, what, if any, scandals there were, how they were treated.
And one thing about like the countries is there's always going to be changes in the government rules and all that. You can you can live there for a month, it seems normal, then something changes. Just some you talk about the media output being bad, and then it just I spent a lot of money to move here. Now I'm getting hated again. So it's the problem is just like you can do all these moves to the countries. It's maybe move to the Netherlands, Japan, but there's always going to be some people who are going to hate, and that you're just going to have to you're just going to have to deal with it. There's always people going to hate you for no reason, without purpose, and it's just going to be tough no matter where you move. Even if hopefully you get blessed with a situation. I'm not going to doubt that. Maybe Japan is really great at solving that. Same as with transgender LGBTQ people. Same with Netherlands. But again, you can't really tell the situation until you kind of live there for many years and all that.
That's completely correct. And the sad reality is, as you said, is that there will always be someone to hate you for something. I've received flack for a great many things, most of which were not even intended to be harmful. But I don't present as queer that I can identify, and I've still had general other types of abuse. For what you said about, see, the difference is that when you refer to just like there will always be someone to sling hatred at you, and there will always be a lack of acceptance. That's the sad truth. But what I think everyone is after is at least less of that. Like at least less of that. We don't have to wonder if you're going to be written out of having rights today, or your access to things restricted because people think you're like a sexual deviant, or that you're going to do terrible things to children in public bathrooms. That's not just acceptable. No country on this earth is perfect, as I recently found out. I've researched a certain country that looked great to move to, and for personally, it would probably still be great. And then I found out about their horrific history with indigenous people. So there's no perfect country in the world. Some come closer than others, sure, but as long as you can just get to a better place, and it might not stay a better place for long, like you said, you have to see if it's worth pursuing, if the time and effort and money is worth sinking in, if you need that safety, however temporary it may be. Then the current climate facing trans people sometimes does dictate that they get away from where they are. The southern part of the Americas in particular is predisposed to one type of correct person. Correct, obviously. And, yeah. Rambling a little bit, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
Do you mind if I just do some brief eye drops here? I'm recovering from laser eye surgery.
That's fine. Since I'll answer the next question while at it. So you're talking about your wife. I'm just curious, how did you kind of meet? I think I'm just going to say at Draw Vinaigrette, and what? And I got I got to do research a lot of times for guess. Why hasn't it been a marriage? Because that's what it says on the bio. Oddly, I'm just curious on that one.
That's fair. So I missed twice, so apologies. I don't really follow normative ideas. It's not out of spite or contrarianism, but like when people say marriage, and if someone else gives you the joke about 50% of all marriages end in divorce, that's way too true from my experience. My parents have obviously divorced, but that aside, I didn't see like a point to marriage. Like the thought process was, I don't need other people's approval with this nonsense certificate to validate how I feel for someone. The thing that's changed now is that with Brexit and the rising anti-trans sentiment in the UK, we know we want to move somewhere. But because of Brexit, she isn't allowed easy access to most countries in the EU. So we're going to couple up, and that's to ensure that she can come with me without any sort of bullshit getting in the way. I want to protect the one I love. That's the reason I'm doing something I would never otherwise do. I met her, should have tackled in that order. I met her about.
Wait, sorry, pardon for the interruption, real quick. Sorry for the interruption. Your mic is staticking a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
So it's like having a robot voice.
Oh yeah, that might be the connection. Am I okay now?
Oh, we'll figure it out. Continue with the story.
Met her about 10 years ago. I can probably say that. It's on a fetish forum. And we got to talking, and then we progressed, because I'm a gamer, to multiplayer together, and then we kept talking, and it was a lot of voice chat, and we kept in touch, and an event occurred which put my life at risk, and she was there to yank me out of it and save my life. And that's sort of when we figured that you've done this great big thing for me. That means things for both of us, and we're going to try with that. So that's about how that went. Had she not intervened at the time, I would have probably died in a foreign country at the time. one whose language I did not speak, in fact.
Just one question before I get next point. What game did you
Mhm.
guys meet in? Because you guys said you guys met for gaming a little bit. Just for fun.
Borderlands, the first one.
Okay, just
Mhm.
interesting. So next thing I got for you is, since we're kind of talking about gaming a little bit, so describe some of the experiences of being a queer in the gaming realm, not an outside world,
That I can do. Oh
being a
boy.
queer or being an LGBTQ person in the gaming world.
How many libraries of content do you want? Like most things, not fantastic and generally getting worse. The unchecked nature of the internet in most places mean that there's no repercussion for saying horrible things to people you don't know. And it's been this like gentle crescendo of ugliness for the last decade and a half. I'd say since about 2005, since the decline of LiveJournal and the unfortunate and pointless rise of lol trolling communities. It's been getting worse because, of course, it was funny to harass people, and then that branched off to what if we targets. And in gaming, capital G gamers do not need help to be nasty assholes. Anyone is fair game. Women get harassed. What are you wearing? What size are your tits? Did you make a sandwich, etc. These are awful things, but they're not as horrible as some of the things people tend to get when they're very outwardly presenting as being queer in any sort of way. So if you're a girl gamer, I apologize for everyone else in gaming because god damn it, but women in a horrible way in terms of these assholes are useful. They're seen as useful for whatever reason, and I'm not even, I don't want to go into that, what I've heard people. But when you're sort of like part of a smaller group online, like, oh, gay people, they're not that big, they're not that dangerous, etc. It's sort of still easier to find yourself at the center of abuse because you're like still this acceptable target. This, especially if you're trans, then I think people seem to think that you're gay and this other thing, and gaming's horrible. For communication, odds are you're not going to find a great deal of people that you want to interact with. You're best served bringing friends in, and again, you can present as yourself if you'd like to, but there is a lot of unnecessary nastiness to go with it. Generally just voice level stuff, certain things that I'm sure you can imagine people will say. But it can go into, in rare cases, it can go into outright stalking with like a particularly vicious hater who will do their best to find out who your friends are, find out if they can get to your real life friends and out you before you're ready to. And
Call the cops.
yeah, in countries where you don't have the protection to not be jailed or shot for being quote unquote deviant, that's worse. Generally speaking, gamers don't need a reason to be shit. We've seen this with swatting as well. If you give them a reason to be shit, they're either more likely to be shit or more vicious when they do it.
I got something to ask a little bit. Talking to, like, are there like groups, are there like gaming groups out there, like notable gaming groups that do have and do promote the LGBT community slash have LGBTQ members in it?
Sorry, I have seen several Steam groups that fall under the Pride banner in terms of a group of people with like queer identification of some type. I haven't seen an out and out trans group in terms of gaming anywhere. I'm certain that they exist, but I can't give you specific examples unless I can just also Google in the background real quick. Probably more of these spaces should exist, just so there was that reinforcement of being with your community, if that makes sense.
Okay, just curious. They have that game groups. They got many game groups for different games. It has to make sense to have for LGBTQ communities, because again, you're heavily abused on any concept. Even if you talk about women being abused, you're hearing those comments. It's being worse for LGBTQ community. Um, there has to be support groups kind of in the gaming. It's great to kind of see that. We're gonna kind of talk about one more thing in regards to that, and about a couple of topics. But the next thing I got for you before this is kind of the last one talking about maybe actually. So the Euro 2020, the big football slash soccer tournament. There's been a controversy regarding there's a German soccer player goalkeeper named Manuel Neuer, who wore a armband with the LGBTQ flag symbol, and UEFA was trying to cause a lot of controversy with it, trying to like put it into court. So I got and so there's a controversy behind that. Wait, so I'm curious, why is that something like just a simple armband so controversial and like to in the meet? I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but why
I see
was
what you know. I
there
see.
trying to be like a lawsuit slash appeal slash controversy around that armband, although the player wasn't a part of LGBTQ community, although they're just supporting it, if it makes sense.
No, it does. It does. Motives are many, possibly many. You have to sort of systematically work down from the most likely example that the person in charge has an anti-LGBTQ agenda of some kind. And what flavor is that? Do they just not want support shown? Do they like hate LGBTQ identifying or LGBTQ people, but have the means to do as they did? Really, it can even be a number. Until you mentioned the lawsuit, I even thought it was corporate
No, it's supposed to be like this
sterilization.
lawsuit slash suspension or something like that. I don't know what it like. I forgot. I just saw it like a couple days ago. I don't think it's on there anymore. But
I don't follow sports at all, but if we do assume that there was a lawsuit, then that is active malice, because I'm assuming that whatever country hosted the Olympics does not have a ban on. I don't want to call it iconic. Yeah.
sorry to interrupt a little bit. So UEFA launched an investigation of the German national football team with Neuer wearing the rainbow armband, captain armband. They said it was supposed to be a political sign, but they stopped it after it was for good cause instead of not being a political movement. So that's the details I got.
Okay. So I can't really comment on the political side of this. It would be very hard for me to untangle the rightful, valid existence of people that differ from the norm, from political means and gains. But it's been a very effective tactic to say that exposing kids to LGBTQ and or trans propaganda or lifestyle, the promotion of such is not good. I think Poland was one of the first ones, possibly after Russia and now Hungary, to try to limit the exposure of LGBTQ and trans things to the kids. That's their excuse anyway. So justifiably, one could say, oh, well, this is, FIFA. How many millions of people watch this? And we don't want to be seen peddling gay propaganda. Well, I don't know. It's maybe very cynical, but I wouldn't think that was all there was to it. Why specifically, I don't know. The last I've heard of FIFA is that they founder was like riled up in some really nasty shit. So what I don't know for this picture is whether it was the German team you've said, but
Yeah.
where were they supposed to play? Because if the German team went to one of these countries that does not permit promotion of LGBTQ agendas, then they might have been able to lean on local law and say, which doesn't make it okay, but you know.
I'll try to figure it out. Well, so last thing so that's kind of basically talking about the main topic. Actually, no, one more thing. So I wrote down on here. So Twitch, how has the LGBTQ representative have been on the Twitch? I'm just curious on that one because I don't have much else to say about that.
My experience. My experience with LGBTQ representation on Twitch is that most people tend to stick to a theming relating to their alignment or LGBTQ banner that they fall under, the specific one. So for me, this meant for several months having an image behind the webcam square that was a flag with combined patterns, themes, whatever you want to call them, of like autism, which hello, and a little V to signify being an ally to trans people in the trans flag colors. It usually doesn't really go too far by this on Twitch. It tends to be maybe a few messages, a little branding, basically. A social media connected to Twitch, like advertising it on Twitter, might get a little bit more gay with it, might get a little bit more trans with it. I've not seen trans as a branding more than I have seen it as an identity. It does help that I think only like fairly recently have we gotten a trans tag to tag our streams with.
Same with LGBTQ tag.
Yeah, and I think specific trans tags, but I could be misremembering that. I've got this memory of a tweet that was saying that they were testing the exposure of this tag. I feel like at least on a deceptive company level, it's at least trying to embrace a couple of things. I just realized that I can't say how the treatment of those streamers themselves is. I don't think there's any active malice from the company. I haven't heard of concentrated efforts for harassment of trans people on Twitch. So as far as I know, that's pretty good.
Okay.
I hope I'm actually answering these questions. I tend to ramble away.
Yeah, that's fine. That's good enough. The rambling makes the podcast better. So actually going back to, they played in Germany for both games. And fun fact today, they're playing against your home country.
Oh dear.
Yeah, and they have to win to make it to the further stages. So fun fact. So that's a blessing, a little bit, maybe a curse if they lose. But yeah, that's something interesting. So I had one more thing, but I'm probably not going to answer it since it might not be interesting for the podcast. So we're gonna do something that I haven't done for a open talk podcast before. We're gonna do either or. This is something that doesn't kind of relate to the topic, but just kind of what you kind of like, what you do. So we, maybe it's like, for example, PC versus console. Rain or sun. Something kind of simple. Just
sure.
It might be more complicated next time. I just said, okay, screw it. So let's start it off. So I got 5 things. Just kind of, it's whatever you kind of preference. It's not, again, I might not do this again. I kind of came up with it. It might be interesting. Just kind of learn a little bit more about you, maybe just because we kind of talked a lot of political stuff, and maybe like try to include some more fun stuff in this because this was a topic that kind of the LGBTQ topic was really kind of negative, kind of supposed to be positive, kind of, you talk about experiences not really the best, but hopefully improve in the long run. So yeah, let's get you like
Yeah.
so first thing I got is cats or dogs. Which
Very dog.
dogs too. Okay, good
Mm.
choice. Cats are not, the claws are just gonna kill you right there.
Oh, I don't dislike them, but they're too unpredictable for me.
Yeah. So bicycling or running if you had to head somewhere.
Cycling, definitely cycling.
I'll go cycling if I owned a bicycle. So gaming, so this is Call of Duty or Minecraft. I know this is two different games, but whatever.
Oh, I haven't played either in about a decade, honestly. Whew.
Okay, we'll go for new games. Valorant or oh my god, I don't know any new games. Crap. We'll go with Valorant or FIFA.
Never played either in my life.
But which one would oh my which okay, let's just go
Um,
back to which one would you rather play out of those two? Just curious on that.
uh, Neither. I got problems with both.
Oh,
I'm sorry to be an ass. That's the
I know,
actual
I know.
answer.
I was trying to guess the games. I know most. I just
Um,
decided to do it. I'll go Call of Duty for mine. Pizza or spaghetti?
Pizza definitely.
Okay, last one is superpowers. I'm gonna try to be more creative with these next time.
Ooh.
Hopefully, I'll try to add 10 of them. But super speed or super strength?
Probably super speed.
Why is that?
I might be able to lift a car and chuck it at you if you make my day, upsetting. But with super speed, there's a lot more you can do in terms of utility. Um, get to a place you're late to, save a guy, drop a guy off a bridge.
Oh,
Just exploring the full possibilities from okay to no. There's way more you can do. Strength is limited to strength. You might be able to lift a building, etc. But practically, what sort of uses do you see for super strength?
just lifting stuff, and maybe you can save a life from it if you want to. Like just say
Oh
someone's
yeah.
under a car, a car flips, they stuck under it.
Mm-hmm.
You can. There's a lot. You have something move a car. Shit, it's a lot of shit with cars.
All right. Maybe
Uh,
there's a truck for
yeah,
variety.
but I gotta go super speed too. I think just
Mm.
kind of going from like quick destination to destination. You don't even need a car at that point. You can save a lot of money. With super speed. Just say it's like flash speed. I'm not saying like you go in like cheetah speed, like just like the speed of a cheetah.
Yeah.
So it's some like free, I don't know the kilometers per hour, but just something similar to the Flash if you kind of kept up with the
Yeah.
superheroes. Yeah.
But like you might still need a car because super speed isn't super stamina.
No, you do get the stamina from it.
That's fine. I was sort of assuming that my main lean with super speed was what if you just whip open a book and you learn this encyclopedia in 4 seconds? Like you just getting
It's
so much.
it's basically these are like physical, so I'm not gonna count mental. But
Mhm.
we can if I want to we can do that. Just go whatever you kind of want with it. So that's going to be the end of the Game Takes podcast, the open talk topic. We could talk about LGBTQ, a lot of the issues, the situation in Hungary and United Kingdom. Hopefully, the situation gets better for both countries as they both look like they're in
That'd be really nice.
turmoil, but we're going to forget about that. Hopefully, the situation improves in America. Talked about being a transgender, talked about the five different stances, if that kind of makes sense what I'm saying. Do you want to, so that's going to be it. Do you want to give any shouts to anyone before we end it off here?
Not a whole lot of people. I was just hoping I could. Brief final word before we went
That's
is
fine. You can do that too.
that usually you try to aim for a more positive thing with the LGBTQ ones. Yeah, I'm a bit of a doomsayer, but it's more out of if you imagine normalcy to be a medium level, and it's fine to elevate and see what's up here and how nice it is and etc etc. But I sort of grew up in a way that makes me want to go lower and put a bar here so nobody else can go lower. So I'll try to if I can, I'd rather pull attention to the problems so that they might be fixed, because the prevailing attitude is, oh, if this bothers you, just ignore it, just log off, just go away, just whatever. And I can, but who does that fix anything for? The problem's still there. So anyway, hi there, Pixel. Hope you're all right, RoboMom. Of course, my lovely wife. She can probably hear me anyway. She can. I heard that. A certain person in Canada. They know who they are. You know who you are. Hello, and hopefully a better existence for my trans friends in the coming future. Stay safe and be awesome.
Well, that's great then. So that's gonna be in the podcast. I'll see you next time around. Well, maybe not you specifically, but any
If you want to.
videos, yeah, and any YouTube videos. Or next time I'll see you. Probably be a couple of days. So that's it. Bye.
Cheers, guys.